Does this look like a bulking or a cutting phase? These pictures were taken 6 weeks apart, and in that time, I lost 5 pounds of fat. How do I know it was fat that I lost and not muscle? Well, in that time, I also got stronger, increasing the weight in my workouts and breaking my personal records. I also visibly see more muscle mass on my body, as you can see in these pictures that I took 6 weeks apart. Now, I'm not saying that you'll get the same results by doing the same things I did because everyone's different and there's a lot of factors at play. Two of the most important factors, in my opinion, are one, genetics, which we can't control, and two is where you're at in your training, because somebody early on in their training phase is going to have access to more potential gains, and somebody who's been training for 15 to 20 years is barely going to be squeezing out the last bit of muscle that they can and is unlikely to have similar results. So this isn't necessarily a how-to, but more a how I approached my 6-week cut in order to actually gain muscle at the same time. So the first step is nutrition. You can't lose weight without being in a calorie deficit, but you don't just want to lose weight, you want to lose fat and maintain your muscle, or like in my case, build muscle. The three main focuses I had for nutrition was being in a calorie deficit, eating a high protein diet about 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, which is about 160 to 180 grams of protein per day, and three, focusing primarily on healthy whole foods. Now, I generally structured my intake to be about 4 to 5 meals per day, and throughout the cut phase, I most of the time was delaying my first meal of the day to about 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. Depending on the day. On the mornings that I had just had a really intense workout the night before, I might eat a little sooner and have, higher protein, maybe some carbs, and I would generally try to save most of my carbs for before and after my workout to help with recovery. As we'll discuss a little bit later in the video, recovery is an important thing to focus on and can be a bit more difficult when you're in a calorie deficit. So just how much of a deficit was I in? Well, shortly before this phase, I was eating about 3,000 to 3,200 calories per day, and I gradually reduced that by about 200 or 300 each day over the course of the first week or so. And then I was averaging roughly around 2.2 thousand per day, but some days I would eat much less if I wasn't working out that day or I'd been off for a couple days, or I would eat a little bit more depending on how things were going. But I tried to average roughly around that 2,200 calorie limit. But again, some days I ate as little as 1,800 calories, and other days I allowed myself to eat a little bit more. I also weighed myself every day in the morning after waking up to make sure I was tracking my weight as closely as possible, and I was averaging that out over the course of a week and not relying too much on a single day's weight, because that can vary and fluctuate quite a lot even from one day to the next. So I took that average weekly weight and I used that as my guide to make sure that I was on the right track. If I wasn't losing as much weight through that week, then I would increase my deficit a little bit the next week, and if I felt like I dropped too much weight in that single week, I allowed myself to eat a little bit more for a day or two before trying to get back on track. So I used that weekly average to help make sure that I was on the right path to hit my goal of about 5 to 6 pounds of weight loss over this 6-week period. And if you're wanting to worry about nothing else and track nothing else, not worrying about the specifics of the calories you're eating, as long as you're eating healthy foods and eating enough protein, then doing your workouts and getting enough rest, then the only thing you really need to track is your weight. And if your weight is increasing, you're eating too much and you need to reassess where you're getting too many calories from. And if you're losing weight too fast, then the opposite obviously applies. Now let's talk about the workout, because I believe that this is where I was able to really make that transition from just losing fat and maintaining muscle to actually building muscle at the same time. Sometimes what's suggested during a cutting phase is to sort of decrease the intensity and frequency, maybe even of your workouts. So you're doing more of a maintenance type of workout. So you're maintaining the muscle, but not really pushing yourself to build muscle. And that's because working out while you're reducing your calories and while you're not eating as many carbs can be really challenging on the body and can be hard to recover from. But not only did I maintain my typical workout, I actually intensified things a little, because for some reason I decided to do a push-up challenge in the midst of all of this. And that is probably why I noticed the most gains in my chest, which works out nice because that was an area that I felt was lacking and I wanted to bring up a little bit. I mentioned I saved most of my carbs for before and after my workout to help with recovery, and high protein was also important in that. But when you're working out very intensely in a calorie deficit, it is difficult to recover from. And so that leads me right into my next point, rest and recovery. You have to make sure you're sleeping well because that can also hinder fat loss if you're not getting adequate sleep. And then you need to ensure that your body is recovering from your workout. And if you're not recovering, you're not going to have a good next workout, and you're potentially going to do more harm to yourself than good and set yourself back. So there were times that I did have to skip a workout because I wasn't ready for it, or I even a couple different times during the month had to take 3 or 4 days off because I was doing a push-up challenge. I did stick to that, but I did take a break from the rest of my workouts. So I needed to listen to my body to make sure I wasn't overdoing it. And believe me, in the calorie deficit, I experienced a lot more systemic fatigue. It also didn't help that I had a brand new son born to me during that period of time, and we were getting less sleep than ideal. So there were a lot of factors at play. But if you are trying to lose weight, particularly lose fat, you need to make sure you keep up with your resistance training, and you need to make sure you're allowing adequate rest. During this time, I was also trying to maintain an average of 10,000 steps per day, which generally only requires me taking my dog on a 30-minute walk once a day. And that's because of, more importantly, what I like to call having a movement mindset. And what that means is, rather than just having dedicated exercise time to get your steps in, you structure your day and your mindset in such a way that you simply move more naturally. And this is fairly easy for me with a toddler and a baby, so I'm constantly running around. But of course, going on a walk every day definitely helps to get the numbers up to 10,000 steps each day. So I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know if there's anything else that you would add to my list of things that are important when you're trying to lose weight or in a cutting phase. And if you've had success while losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time, what things that you felt were the most important for that. I would really appreciate it if you would like the video, drop a comment, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel for future videos from me. And I hope to see you in the next video.